Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The zipper caught halfway up her back, the sound slicing through the quiet of the room. The air was thick, humid with the faint scent of her perfume and the lingering echo of rain against the window. In the mirror's reflection, she saw him, her husband, leaning against the doorframe, his gaze steady, unreadable. Her breath hitched. It wasn't what he said, it was the way he looked at her. That silent pause stretched between them, alive with a kind of electricity that needed no words. Every small movement, a shift of his hand, the tightening of her fingers on the fabric, carried 1,000 unspoken thoughts. He stepped closer. The distance between them vanished in seconds, replaced by the quiet rhythm of shared breathing. She felt the warmth of him before he even touched her, the kind of warmth that could burn if you stayed too long. The soft hum of the city below faded away. All that existed was the low light, the whisper of fabric, and the magnetic pull of two people who had danced this silent dance 100 times before, each time ending differently, each time meaning more. His hand brushed against her shoulder, slow, deliberate. She met his eyes in the mirror, searching for something she couldn't name. Was it desire? Anger? Regret? Maybe all three. Then, just as the air seemed to break with tension, the sound of the zipper changed direction. She froze. In that moment, the room became smaller, the air heavier, the future uncertain. Every choice, every word unspoken between them hovered like a storm ready to break. And as her dress slipped lower, a question burned behind her eyes. Was this passion, or something else entirely? The story begins there, between love and mystery, between a touch and a truth too deep to name. The silence between them deepened until it felt alive, pulsing, aware, almost breathing on its own. She didn't move, not yet. His reflection in the mirror was still, but his eyes told another story. They followed the curve of her shoulder, the faint rise and fall of her chest, the delicate tremor in her hands as she tried to steady herself. He took another step. The air seemed to hum at his nearness. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the quiet recognition that something unspoken was unraveling. A memory, perhaps, one of laughter, closeness, promises whispered in the dark. Her voice broke the silence, low and uneven. Are you just going to stand there? His lips curved, but he said nothing. Instead, he reached out, slowly, as though testing the weight of the moment, and brushed a loose strand of hair from her neck. The touch was light, fleeting, yet it felt like a spark that might ignite something neither of them was ready to face. She turned then, not completely, just enough to meet his gaze directly. Their eyes locked, and the space between them became charged, heavy with a longing that words could never fully express. The rhythm of their breathing changed. Her dress shifted slightly, the soft fabric whispering against her skin. His hand lingered near her shoulder, not touching now, but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Time felt fragile. One more heartbeat, and the line between restraint and surrender would blur beyond recall. He leaned in, just a fraction closer, his breath tracing the side of her face. She closed her eyes, not to escape, but to hold the moment still. It wasn't about what might happen next, it was about what almost did. Then came the sound, soft but final, the faint click of the doorknob turning behind them. Both froze. Whatever this was, whatever it was becoming, hung there, suspended between what they wanted and what they shouldn't. And in that heartbeat of hesitation, the world outside their silence began to knock. The air between them trembled with everything unsaid. Neither moved for a long time, as if motion itself might shatter the fragile balance holding them together. The faint rhythm of their breathing filled the quiet, soft but unsteady, like the beginning of a storm. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her skin, warm, searching, dangerously familiar. Every inch of space between them seemed to shrink, drawn tight by the pull of something neither of them could quite name. He stepped closer, slow enough that she could have turned away, but she didn't. The light from the window slid across his face, catching the hesitation in his eyes, the same hesitation that mirrored in her own. Her hand moved first, though she wasn't sure why. Maybe to steady herself, maybe to stop him, maybe to see if the connection was real. Her fingers brushed his wrist. The contact was small, fleeting, but it sent a ripple through the stillness that felt too big to contain. His breath hitched, quiet but sharp. For a moment, he seemed to fight it, the urge to close the distance, to let go of reason, but then his resolve faltered. Their nearness felt like gravity, impossible to resist once caught in its pull. The room seemed smaller now. The walls, the silence, the faint sound of rain outside, all blurred into the background. What remained was the pulse of something raw and unfinished. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "You should go." But even as she said it, neither of them moved. His hand hovered near hers, close enough to feel the warmth, far enough to still pretend there was a choice. Seconds stretched thin, trembling between surrender and restraint. Every breath, every glance, every heartbeat seemed to ask the same question: what if we don't stop this time? The tension broke not with touch, but with silence, the kind that promised this wasn't over. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant, like the echo of something they both knew was coming. And still, they didn't look away. The thunder outside rolled closer now, its low growl seeping through the glass like a heartbeat that matched their own. Every flash of lightning lit the room in silver, tracing their faces, their proximity, the thin veil of restraint still holding them apart. He stood just inches from her. The scent of rain mixed with her perfume, sweet and sharp, clinging to the air between them. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, steady, unrelenting, dangerous. Her pulse fluttered at the base of her throat. She tried to breathe evenly, but every inhale trembled. The silence pressed against her chest, heavy with all the words neither dared to say. His voice came low, rough around the edges. "You really want me to walk away right now?" She turned to him fully, the soft fabric of her dress shifting with the motion. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world outside vanished. What replaced it was stillness, thick, electric, and alive with possibility. Her reply caught somewhere between defiance and surrender. "I don't know what I want." He stepped closer. Her back met the cool edge of the dresser, the wood grounding her while the rest of her seemed to dissolve. His hand lifted, stopping just short of her face, close enough that she could feel the warmth of it, the intention trembling in the space between them. Lightning flared again, and in that moment, she saw everything in his expression, the longing, the regret, the battle he was losing. Her heart raced in answer, pounding in time with the rain. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The tension rose until it felt tangible, like a thread drawn too tight, ready to snap. He leaned in. The world narrowed to the sound of their breathing, the distance between them shrinking to nothing. For a heartbeat, she thought he might close that space, erase the line they'd held for so long. But just before the moment broke, the sound of the front door echoed faintly down the hall. They froze, eyes wide, breaths caught midair, caught between the fire they'd ignited and the world waiting outside their silence. And in that stillness, everything hung in balance. The sound of the door clicking open sliced through the room like a sudden gust of cold air. She flinched. His hand dropped, the space between them flooding back with distance. For a moment, neither breathed. The quiet that followed was too still, like the moment before a confession or a lie. "Who's here?" she whispered, her voice tight, almost trembling. He didn't answer immediately. His gaze shifted toward the hallway, the shadows pooling beneath the doorway. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly, slow, deliberate, and far too familiar. Her heart began to pound. She recognized that rhythm. It wasn't just anyone. Her sister's voice drifted down the corridor, light, unsuspecting. "Hey, are you home? I saw the lights on." The words hit like ice. The air in the room, thick a moment ago with tension and heat, now froze around them. He took a step back, jaw tight, eyes locked on hers. The unspoken question hung there, what now? She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. You have to go, she mouthed. But his hesitation lingered. His pulse still beat visibly at his throat, his body still drawn to hers despite the danger now seeping into the edges of the moment. The footsteps grew louder. The sister was getting closer. Without thinking, she grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the wardrobe. The sudden nearness reignited what they'd tried to bury, the brush of his shoulder against hers, the rush of air between them, the quick, shallow breaths that refused to calm. They slipped inside the narrow space just as the door to the bedroom opened. Light spilled across the room. Her sister's voice was cheerful, unaware. You left your phone downstairs. Thought you might need it. The woman pressed her back to the wall, heart hammering so hard she was sure it could be heard. His hand was braced beside her, inches from her face. The heat of him filled the dark. The scent of rain, of him, of tension, all tangled into something she couldn't escape. Neither spoke. Neither dared. The sister lingered for a moment, her presence stretching the silence thin. Then, with a sigh, the door closed again. Her footsteps retreated down the hall. But the danger hadn't passed. Now, trapped in the quiet, their restraint was unraveling again, this time worse, deeper, more dangerous. Their eyes met in the dim light filtering through the cracks of the wardrobe door. It wasn't just temptation anymore. It was the realization that they had crossed an invisible threshold, one that neither could undo. He whispered her name, barely audible. Her hand trembled where it rested near his. Outside, thunder cracked again, sharp and final. Inside, silence held its breath. The air inside the wardrobe had grown too tight to hold their silence any longer. She could feel his heartbeat against the stillness, fast and uneven, echoing her own. The storm outside raged now, lightning flooding the room in bursts of white and shadow. With every flash, she saw his face, eyes dark, jaw tense, something breaking beneath the surface. And then the restraint snapped. Not in words, not even in touch, but in the look they shared. It was the kind of look that stripped away pretense, leaving nothing between them but the truth neither had dared to speak. She pushed open the wardrobe door and stepped out, the air hitting her like a gasp. He followed, silent, but every movement carried the weight of everything they'd almost done, and everything they still could. Why do we keep doing this, she said, her voice trembling between anger and need. He didn't answer right away. His hand raked through his hair, his breath unsteady. Because we don't know how to stop. The confession cracked the space open between them. For a heartbeat, the storm outside seemed to pulse with their rhythm, light, dark, light again. She took a step forward, then another. Then maybe we stop pretending. But just as their eyes locked again, a sound sliced through the moment, her phone, buzzing against the dresser. The name on the screen froze her in place. It was her sister. She stared at it, pulse racing. Slowly, she picked it up. The message preview flashed once before fading. He just left. Said he needed to talk to you. Look outside. Her breath caught. She turned toward the window. Through the streaks of rain, headlights glowed in the driveway, her husband's car. She looked back at the man standing before her, his expression shifting from desire to dread. Outside, the front door opened. The storm wasn't the only thing about to break. The rain had softened to a whisper by the time she turned from the window. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered, in the air, in their hearts, in the charged silence that refused to fade. He stood there, still, as though frozen between confession and retreat. The headlights outside flickered across his face, revealing everything he couldn't hide anymore, remorse, longing, and something that looked too much like love. She stepped closer, her voice calm now, steadier than she felt. He's here. I know, he said quietly. You should go. But she didn't move. There was no fear left, only the quiet ache of understanding what could never truly be undone. Their story had been written in glances, built in stolen seconds, and sealed in silence. It wasn't about what they did, it was about what they almost did. Her hand brushed his as she passed him. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of everything unsaid. Maybe in another life, she whispered. He gave a faint, rueful smile. Maybe in this one, just not tonight. The sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Her husband's voice called her name, sharp but concerned. She inhaled slowly, pulling the scattered pieces of herself back into place. When she turned back for one last look, the man was gone. Only the faint scent of rain and cologne lingered in the air, proof that the moment had been real, even if it couldn't last. She walked to the mirror, her reflection meeting her eyes with a steadiness she hadn't seen before. The storm outside might have ended, but the one inside her had just begun to settle. As she reached for the zipper of her dress, this time, alone, she smiled faintly, the curve of her lips holding both regret and quiet defiance. Some endings don't close the story. They simply change the way you remember it.